I'm Marie Cheeseman. I'm the past chair of the Ministry and Money Working Group at Holy Trinity Pembroke.
Hello, my name is Jillian Hoyer. I am an associate incumbent in the parish of the Valley with responsibility for our communications and our advancement. Jesus talked about money in the recorded words in the Gospels. And so I think that how we steward our money, how we steward our time, our gifts, are such an important part of what it means to be a holistic and healthy Christian community. And so stewardship is a part of our life together and the way we live into God's mission here in our part of the Valley.
At Holy Trinity, we've identified three primary concerns that we are attempting to address. The first is the uneven distribution of offerings throughout the year. I read recently in an article from Canada Helps that between 30 and 40% of the annual offerings received by not-for-profits comes in the last 2 months of the year. So it creates a challenge, and obviously a church is no different. We have a number of congregants who use PAR, which is the pre-authorized remittance, to donate to the church. And as the congregation ages and people pass away, we're seeing those contributions decline, but there aren't people stepping forward at the same rate. In addition to that, we have a 100-year-old church. And with that comes its own challenges. Every church has its own challenges in terms of capital infrastructure requirements, but we just are cognizant of the fact that any undertakings that we have in that regard can be costly. As we were coming out of COVID, we recognized that our financial situation had changed. People hadn't been gathering together, and the offerings were obviously smaller than they had been, and a number of people just did not return to church. So Reverend Matthew, who is our incumbent, he suggested that we pull together a small working group to help advise council in terms of what we might do around assessing what we're doing currently in terms of fundraising, but then also possibly make recommendations to congregational council and the congregation as a whole. And we developed a mandate that would allow us to undertake that analysis and then bring recommendations forward. The second was to try and tie in groups like our Anglican church women. They are a really strong force in our church and have been for years. They're a strong contributor to the church coffers on an annual basis, and they do a lot of the fundraising, particularly when it comes to events that are hosted through the kitchen. So they're a strong voice that we felt needed to be incorporated into whatever plans we might have down the road. In addition, we have a property committee that we felt that we needed to dialogue with. So we sort of started with a nucleus of 4 and then tried to figure out who the key decision makers that might have input and help us discern what might be needed in terms of projects that we'd work on.
We have made use of the Episcopal Network for Stewardship, or TEN's, resources in planning our Pentecost Appeal, Digging Deep, Reaching High. We look at all of the resources that they offer, which are so varied, and select 4 or 5 weekly reflections that we think fit with both the theme of where we are at as a congregation here at Holy Trinity Pembroke, but also the broader life of our parish. And we use those as the basis for the Pentecost Appeal each year. The weekly reflections show up in the Pew Bulletin each week throughout the appeal, and we try to draw on some of those themes across those different reflections in both our introductory letter to the Pentecost Appeal, but also in our preaching each week. So it's a multi-part appeal each year that really takes a different flavor depending on the season of the church year and where we are at as a congregation. Our stewardship activities follow the cycle of the church year. So we begin in Advent with the Advent Appeal. That is a letter to everyone across the parish encouraging a one-time gift to their parish, to their local congregation, for the ministry of that local congregation. in that season. And then we come to the season of Pentecost, and we have the Pentecost Appeal, Digging Deep, Reaching High, here at Holy Trinity Pembroke. We have also, in addition to the Ministry and Money Working Group here at Holy Trinity Pembroke, we also have a Stewardship Working Group at St. John the Evangelist, Eganville. And that Stewardship Working Group has focused more on gifts of time and talents, and that happens during the Pentecost season as well. Because we are an area parish with multiple congregations and multiple clergy, we really try to tailor the stewardship to the needs of each congregation.
I'd say initially the time investment to undertake an initiative like the Pentecost Appeal, because that is probably the biggest time commitment for us. Initially, it's a little bit more labor intensive than once you get the pattern established, and you can sort of update or tweak things in the subsequent year. But again, there are only 4 people on our committee. We didn't want to overload anybody. We tried for a good distribution of labor, if you will. And as the years progressed, we found that we could really pull it off in fairly short order. In terms of expenditure, it's not a huge expenditure. We're basically paying for the cost of a mailing, and then we do print envelopes specific to the campaign. So we print a reply envelope, and the letter that goes out, it has a logo attached to it. And we've also developed a byline for it, which is Digging Deep, Reaching High. And that seems to resonate with people too. So the cost that we incur is simply letterhead and a couple of hundred envelopes. The one element that we have undertaken that does require maybe a little bit more of an investment in time is the application to various government grants. They can be labor intensive because you spend some time trying to figure out how they work, but over time, you sort of develop a pattern on that. For the grants, I would say in the last 3 years, we have generated just over $100,000 in revenue. We've been able to recently rebuild our accessibility ramp to the elevator. We purchased new freezers and fridges for the kitchen. We were able to get brand new chairs and tables for our church hall. But it's the primary source of where we undertake our fellowship with a broader community.
The impact is that people are talking, people are engaging. The Pentecost Appeal short videos that we produced about why I love my congregation, why I attend Holy Trinity Pembroke, really got people connecting with each other in a different way. That doesn't need to be a byproduct of our Stewardship Appeal. This is all about building community, and we are building community in everything that we do. What should other parishes do to strengthen their stewardship practices? I think start with where you're at. Take assessment of the gifts and the talents and the programs and activities that are already happening, and evaluate where you go from there. We started really small with a letter that went out across the parish, and that has formed the basis of all of the work that we have done since then. We pulled together a group of people. Not all of us are financial wizards, but are people who have a passion for stewarding the work here in our part of the world and the gifts that God has given us, and seeing those used for the betterment of our church communities here.